Welcome to the Marriage Unmasked podcast. Today, I have a question I want to ask you to start things off. Have you ever opened up to your spouse and then you left the conversation feeling worse, like they weren't really listening to your heart at all?
Or maybe your spouse shared something that was really emotional and you tried to help them out or tried to fix it, but it just made it even worse. It didn't help things at all. And that's what happens when we don't validate each other when we're having a difficult conversation like that. And so today we're sharing the top 5 ways to validate your spouse and to create safety in the relationship.
And honestly, Adam and I struggled with this so much for most of our marriage. I wasn't validated as a kid and did not learn this until we were married many years. I didn't even know what validation really meant. And I was more invalidated probably as a child growing up. We really struggled with healthy communication.
Yeah,
and this
definitely.
this is part of healthy communication. This is actually something we teach a lot in our Healing Your Marriage course. But so most of our conversations, I was trying to be right all the time. I had a lot of wounds that I didn't realize. And I was usually listening to him to then come back with my side that was right. And so I remember one time this is when we were struggling with the masculine feminine dynamic, right? Like he was not stepping into his masculine strength leading our family, and I was stepping into more masculinity, and it was just causing a lot of problems in our marriage. We were having a conversation. I was asking him to start stepping up a little bit more in parenting, especially with our sons. And then one of our sons had a kind of big explosion, I'll say, just acting out of character, and he was hurting, and Adam once again didn't step in, and I had to step in again and work through that with him. And so then when I brought that up to Adam, I didn't bring it up in a healthy way either. Of course, I was coming with a lot of accusation, and what I often did back then is, when I started bringing up one thing, it kind of brought up some other things in my head. So it was like, I asked you to do this, you said you were going to, and you didn't. And you also said you were going to do that, and you didn't, right? And then you said you were going to do that, and you didn't do that either. And I was just kind of bleeding out a lot of hurt that had been in my heart. And then he, of course, was getting defensive. And so he's sharing all these excuses. Instead of listening to hear his heart, I was only listening to respond. I was only listening to get myself heard.
Yeah, and vice versa, right? Because I was also, when I was going into defensive mode, I'm doing the exact same thing. I'm not hearing the hurt behind her and all of these things. I'm just hearing this machine gun list of things that I'm doing wrong, and I'm getting offended, and I'm listening to respond as well. So we both are doing the same thing in this situation, where we're not validating, we're just trying to respond and kind of attack back.
Also, we were not sharing our emotion, like coming, and this is what we teach our clients, is to, when you come to the conversation, share your actual emotion. Like, I feel frustrated, I feel lonely. We weren't doing that.
You have to know what's going on inside of yourself and then be able to share that in a healthy way. I don't know if either one of us were really tuning into our own emotions, understanding them, and then sharing them. Definitely not sharing them in a healthy way.
Yeah, and so he wasn't necessarily sharing his emotion, and maybe your spouse isn't sharing their emotion either, but you can still validate. That's what we're going to teach you today, is how you can still validate them, even if they're not very clearly sharing their emotion, and it's more of their thoughts. Because that's what I struggled with, is Adam was just then sharing back to me all these, what I felt were excuses. And so I'm like, I'm not going to validate his excuses. Those aren't true. Those aren't valid. And so that's where I really struggled, because I refused to see the pain underneath, see his heart underneath. And I was set on correcting him that those things weren't true. His excuses are not valid, and I'm right. And so it just ended in so much pain, so much disconnection that led nowhere.
Yeah, I think it's really important to understand that validation, it's not just agreeing with the story or those thoughts that I was sharing with her or the thoughts that she was sharing with me. It is going deeper. It's providing a safe place for the emotions behind those thoughts.
Yeah.
And actually recognizing those, acknowledging those emotions, because the emotions are not right or wrong. The emotions are just a reality. That's just what somebody's going through. That's their experience. That's their feeling. And those are important. Otherwise, you start to fight about it. You start to pick sides and attack each other instead of we're on the same team, we're on the same side. And to do that, to get on the same side, you reach out to their emotions. You can be like, I understand how you're feeling in this situation and what you're going through. And that helps to relax out of this defense and attack mode. And we can have this conversation and we see each other in this conversation. We can actually get somewhere and solve the problem instead of attack the person and attack their thoughts.
And really what you're saying when you're validating is like, you matter. And just like Adam was saying, like, we're not opponents in this. Remember, you're one. And so I think validation helps you to come back to that oneness where I see you, you matter to me because we're one. So if you're hurting, I'm hurting, right? And I want to show you how much you do matter to me. And that's a deep like core wound for me, is the like, you don't matter, from so many years ago. And so it means a lot to me when Adam does validate me, and it also hurts very deeply when he doesn't validate me, because that's been a very deep wound that I've needed to heal, is that belief like I don't really matter.
Yeah.
So yeah, validation is so important.
It really is. Jesus did validation really well. You think of the story of Mary and Martha, where their brother has just died, and they are going through a lot of emotion. They're going through a lot of turmoil and chaos. Again, a lot of hurt, even because after all, they had sent a message to Jesus and he wasn't even there yet. And so now their brother had died. And so there's some hurt there. There's some pain. There's this feeling of devastation and loss that they're going through. And what Jesus does when he shows up there, now he already knows what he's going to do. He's going to solve the problem. He's going to fix everything. But before he does any kind of fixing, before he does anything to solve the problem, he actually takes time to be with them and to just be present with them. He says things like, I am the resurrection and the life to her. I'm present with you, is what he's really saying. And he's not trying to solve the problem yet. And then he actually cries.
Yeah.
You know, like he joins into the emotional experience that they're going through and experiences it with them. He's going to raise Lazarus from the dead. He's going to solve this whole problem. It's going to be this joyous thing, but he actually enters into their emotion with them, cries with them, spends time with them in what they're feeling before he solves the problem, before he actually raises Lazarus from the dead. So it's really cool to see how Jesus handles that whole situation with such beautiful validation of their feelings.
Yeah, so much love. You know, that this is why validation is so important, because it creates this safety. You feel understood. That's what validation is. It's helping you to feel understood and seen. And when you feel that way, your nervous system calms down, you know, and it builds trust and it builds openness, and it stops the defensiveness. You don't need to defend yourself when you feel understood. The thing is, when we don't have validation, that's where we see a lot of shutdown. You know, I know for myself, when I've tried to share and then he invalidates what I'm feeling, I just emotionally shut down. Like, okay, I tried to open my heart to you, and in the past, you know, now I have worked on that as well. But in the past, when I was very sensitive and needing you to validate me, now I know that God validates me no matter what, and I can validate myself. But when I was in that, it was like, okay, you just invalidated me. I'm done. I'm not opening my heart up again, because you just totally stomped on it, basically, is what it felt like. And so that's why validation is so important, because it says you matter and your experience matters, and I care about you. That's powerful.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk about the 5 ways to validate your spouse in these kind of conversations. Number 1 is to listen to understand. And this is really huge. This is really important, because a lot of times what we're doing is we're listening to respond. We're on the defensive. We're closed off. Maybe we're thinking of the next thing to say. Like, I can't wait to get my time in here. Like, we're not actually even hearing what they're saying. We're just getting prepared for an attack, prepared to respond back. And that does not help. So listening and actually taking in what they say, you're listening for what's going on behind what their words are saying even. And then you also need to really practice these active listening skills. You want to have good eye contact with them instead of looking away. You don't want to interrupt them and just start jumping in there, because all that does is create an atmosphere of defensiveness and attack again, because you're just disrupting the flow of conversation. You're trying to correct them sometimes instead of just let them say what they need to say. Or you're going to try to come up with a bunch of solutions. Like we're trying to fix the problem first before we're actually like validating and understanding where their emotions are coming from. So it's really important for you to really listen to what's going on underneath what they're saying. Okay, I hear that she's very hurt behind what she's saying. It's coming across in a way that's making me upset. It's starting to make me feel like I have to defend myself. But maybe I can take a breath and I can actually listen to her words and listen to the emotion underneath those words and go, okay, she's feeling really hurt right now. I want to respond first to the hurt that she's feeling. How can I respond to that and say something like, it sounds like you're very hurt, and that matters to me. That makes sense to me that you're feeling really hurt and that what I did hurt you. And that's validation, and that's what you want to do.
And this is so much harder when you are not healing your own wounds, right? Because, for instance, when with Adam and I, like I know you struggled so much to validate me because he was stuck in so much shame himself. Yeah. So no matter what I'm saying, he's going to take it personally, and he's just thinking about himself and his own shame. Yep. And so it was very hard for you to hear what I'm really saying because you're just listening for anything that's going to feed that shame story.
I was hearing everything as an attack, hearing everything as a personal attack, and that is not healthy. It's not all a personal attack against your heart. That isn't the reality of what's going on. But when you are seeing it through the lens of shame, when you're seeing it through the lens of pain, then you're taking it that way, and it raises your defenses. So you do have to heal your own heart.
Yeah, and there's more than just shame too. Like for me, right? There's a lot of different wounds, and that would also impact me from listening to him to understand because I'm trying to get my own needs met, or my brain is fueling the stories in my head that I'm believing that aren't true. Doing that inner healing is just really, really powerful work in communicating, because really, when you are communicating, it's not just the words you say. It is the energy that you bring. It is the heart that you're bringing. And when you're bringing this really hurting, bleeding out heart, that's going to come out and affect the communication every single time. So that's why we really emphasize inner healing so much. That's a whole module in our Healing Your Marriage courses on inner healing, where we really walk you through step by step and give you the tools, because it's so powerful. We've seen it in our own marriage. Just, I mean, it changes our whole life, not just our marriage, but our entire life. Me as a woman, right? Adam as a man. Yeah. So,
and that's why I'm working so hard on putting together an inner healing course for men, because I know a lot of us as men are hurting deeply and we don't even understand it. We're not even processing those things very well yet. And so in my refined men's community, I have a course that I'm developing to help men go deep, to understand their emotions, to understand what they're going through internally, and to really know who they are in Christ, because all of that can help you see yourself differently from a better lens, and then you can respond in such a healthier way when you know who you are and you're not coming from this place of shame and all these pent-up emotions that you don't know how to name or process.
that is so powerful. Okay, so number 2, back to top 5 ways to validate your spouse. Number 2 is to name the emotion that you hear. And like I said before, we actually teach couples to name their own emotion, which is so much easier to validate then, right? It actually makes it so clear. Oh, they just shared their emotion. I'm going to validate them. But if they don't know how to do that, or if they aren't sharing their emotion, then you can listen for the emotion underneath, like Adam was talking about, and then you can sometimes name that for them. That can be really helpful and really show them, like, I'm so invested in you, like I'm listening, I'm trying to understand you even more. So it might sound like that sounds really disappointing, right? Or I can imagine you'd be frustrated about that. And you're just helping them name that emotion if that's something that maybe they struggle with. And if you're not sure, go in a very humble, gentle way and make a guess. Sometimes I do this with clients even, right? If they're having a really hard time naming their emotions, I will sometimes just offer a few guesses. And then they're like, yes, right? It can be difficult. So then helping them name their emotion can really show how much you care.
Yeah, and that's important too. Sometimes, even if you get it wrong, it's okay, because now you're starting to have a conversation about the emotions. So they can correct you and they can be like, well, no, I'm not really feeling that, but I am feeling this. or if they correct you in that, that can be really powerful, because now you're having a conversation about the emotions that are behind the issue. So don't be afraid to get it wrong too, but just go after that, go after hearing that. That's really important. So number 3 is to validate before you explain, to show that you really care. And this is a big one for me, because this is something like we talked about in the story Cara shared a little bit more. This is one I struggled with all the time, because in my defensiveness, I would often jump to explanations. I would feel attacked, and so I'd think, okay, well, my perspective is this. This is my perspective. This is how I feel about this. This is my side of the story. And I would try to explain away what was going on, instead of deal with how Kara was feeling. So maybe she's feeling angry, she's feeling hurt, she's feeling all these things, and it's coming out, and I don't like, this feeling that is rising up inside of me. I don't like this like shame feeling, like, oh my gosh, I screwed up again. I did this wrong. And so I feel defensive, and I'm like, I got to explain this away. Well, it's not exactly like that. Or I'll jump on something about her complaint that maybe isn't 100% accurate. And then I'll jump all over that and try to explain, but none of that helps. Like, all that does is really just invalidate what she's feeling. And there is a time and a place to have that conversation. There's a time and a place to talk about perspective. There's a time and a place to tell them about your thoughts and your story that you're believing, but it isn't right away. First, the very first thing you need to do is really to validate those emotions and to get underneath the surface, because once you create an emotional atmosphere that's safe and that is, positive, and you're able to come together emotionally first, then you're in a safe place to explain, to talk about what happened, to tell the story that you're believing, and to take some ownership for that story that you're believing, and really talk through the situation more clearly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And number 4 is don't minimize or compare. And it is deeply painful when you open your heart and share something, and then somebody minimizes, right? Or they compare. Like, so for instance, I have walked through chronic pain that has just been ongoing for 10 plus years here, and it's been one of the hardest things I've ever walked through. And sometimes I open up about it, not very often, because what I've gotten in the past is well, at least you don't have this, at least, right? Like, you're not going through that. Like, you're sharing it because it matters to you. And now they're basically saying, well, it's not, no, it doesn't really matter that much, right? And that's so hard. And validation isn't about ranking pain, right? It's not comparing, it's recognizing it. It isn't a competition. Nothing with pain and emotions is ever a competition. And sometimes I see women even invalidating themselves. Yeah, I've talked with some of the wives in Restored, where they're like, well, at least I'm not going through what you're going through, or at least this isn't as bad as if this happened. And I'm like, no, because your pain matters. What you're going through right now, that means something, and that's affecting you deeply.
Yeah.
And so sometimes we can actually even invalidate ourselves by comparing us to somebody else that we've maybe ranked their pain as worse than ours. It's so much more healing when we invite in love and compassion. We validate that pain, because it really does matter, and it is really deeply affecting you. I love that passage in Romans 13:15, that says, rejoice with those who rejoice, right? Mourn with those who mourn. Because God made us to be with each other, to support each other. And in marriage, this is one of the most special things about it, is that you don't have to walk through this pain alone. You have somebody to walk with you and support you and love you and validate you. So this is all just really such a special gift that God gives us in marriage that sometimes we miss out on because we don't know how to validate.
Yeah, absolutely. And that really walks us right into number 5, because number 5 is to hold space for their emotions and allow them space to process those emotions through. Be present with them. It's not checking out. It's not like looking away. It's not leaving the room. It's, I'm here with you. That matters to me. You matter to me. Your emotions matter to me. And I'm going to be here with you. Take as long as you need to process through this. I'm not going anywhere. That's part of that one flesh union, really, is to be present with each other when we are having emotional issues.
Mm-hmm. A phrase that can be really helpful with this number 5 is like, we'll figure this out together. I'm right here. right? That's kind of that mourn with those who mourn, like, I'm right
Yeah.
here. Let's figure this out. Another one is, I care about how you feel, even if I don't understand it, right? Because like Adam, he's never been able to understand my pain, right? My
Yeah.
migraine pain, my
Right.
extensive chronic pain. He's maybe had a little headache here or there, but he doesn't understand migraines for a week at a
Yeah.
time, right?
Mhm.
And so, but he can still let me know he cares.
Yeah.
And even if he doesn't understand it, he does care how I feel, and he's here with me when I'm walking through it. And I think it's important to talk about what validation is not. It's not agreeing with unhealthy behavior, and it's not agreeing with untrue beliefs.
Mhm.
And I know we struggled for a while because you wanted me to validate you, but you weren't sharing your actual emotion.
Right.
And you would always say, you're not hearing my perspective. You don't ever care about my perspective. And I was like, what is that? To me, his perspective was his own thoughts, which weren't true, right? They were untrue beliefs he was having. And he wanted me to validate them. I think what you really wanted was me to validate your emotions.
Yeah, I think so.
Right. But I was like, oh, I'm not going to validate untrue beliefs that you have about this. Like, this stuff isn't true. And you don't need to validate their beliefs, right? But for me to see what was going on underneath, like what was he feeling, that would have been helpful. Validation is also not stuffing your own feelings to keep the peace, right? It's not just like, okay, let me just validate them, but I'm not ever going to share my own emotions, just whatever makes them happy. Validation is also not letting someone mistreat you either. You don't want someone just railroading over you and saying whatever they want. Validation is not like being nice, right? It's not nice behavior. It's, you are intentionally showing them they matter to you, that you care about them, but you're not validating things that are unhealthy.
Yeah, so we have a challenge for you. So this week, every day, choose one moment to intentionally validate your spouse's emotions before reacting to them. So pay really close attention to what they're going through, what they're feeling, and validate those feelings, validate those emotions. Ask yourself, what emotion do I think that they're feeling right now? Get curious with it and really try to understand, try to dig below the surface, and then show them that you care about them. Show them that you see them in that feeling. And watch how that results, because it can be very, very powerful when you start to practice this, especially if you haven't been practicing this in the past.
Another thing that helps is when you learn how to validate yourself, which is another thing we teach in our Healing Your Marriage course, then you have a different kind of voice, right? You learn that matters. You start to heal your own wounds there with God, and then you're naturally wanting to validate. You're naturally letting that love come out onto your spouse too. And this is so important because when validation becomes a habit and that love just flows out of you, safety becomes the atmosphere of your marriage. And that's connecting, right? You're feeling so connected. So many of the couples that we coach, the safety is gone.
Yeah.
That is why there's so much pain and disconnection, because they actually don't feel safe with each other, whether it's in sex and intimacy, in communication, sharing their feelings, opening their heart. They don't feel safe anymore. And so validation is actually huge. And we're happy to answer your questions, walk you through this further. Reach out to us if you need any help. And I really encourage you to share this podcast with a friend who might be hurting in their marriage, or share it with your spouse for sure. We'd love it if you'd rate and review the podcast as well and share it on socials. That would be great for getting the word out, because that's what we're here to do, is just help walk you through how to reconnect in your marriage and how to heal your heart too, heal those wounds, get that inner healing with God. You are so loved. We're so thankful that you listened today.